Welcome to Longevity Industries' presentation of the Destiny of Manufacturing podcast. I'm your host, Dean Phillips. I want to thank our sponsor, the Precision Metal Forming Association and the PMA's Educational Foundation, for all of their great work and their willingness to help this show get along. I have with me today, I am very fortunate to have Trevor Ryals from Kenwal Steel, where he is, of course, the Division General Manager. Welcome, Trevor.
Thank you, Dean. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your extraordinarily busy schedule. It's tough to keep up, I know.
I think everybody says that, right? So.
Well, some it's more true than others, and you're definitely in that category.
Well, not a problem. I'm glad to be a part of it.
Thank you so much. Our first thing we always like to do is get your key takeaway for a 5-year picture from now. What do you think is going to be the biggest dramatic change and the most impactful in manufacturing?
Well, I think, from everything I'm reading and hearing from customers and other folks, is going to be, the ongoing labor problem, but the advent of the robotics and the things that are done on the plant level to help offset the labor problems. I mean, I think there's significant data that shows that robotics are playing a key role in a lot of manufacturing facilities, and we're seeing it here in Middle Tennessee, where companies that have 40, 50 employees are finding ways to automate and spend the money on the robotics side to offset having a lack of employees.
Right.
And I think that's only going to advance itself even further from the 5 to 10 year mark. I think the key is going to be those companies that have the margin and the ability to invest in those technologies and be on the forefront of that versus some of the more traditional steel-consuming automotive stamping in steel areas where it's more difficult to find those opportunities.
Yes. So tell everybody a little bit about your background and about Kenwal Steel and about how you got involved in manufacturing.
Well, I was born in Longview, Texas, and my dad was a shift supervisor of the Schlitz tall boy cans, if you remember those from the 70s with the big pull tabs.
Yep.
So as a kid, I kind of spent my Saturdays going in that manufacturing plant. So I was around can making, and I was around steel coils and all that growing up, and we ended up moving to Cincinnati. And, I just always, watched what my dad did and admired him as he moved up as plant manager. And I always had a thing for manufacturing. I felt like I wanted to do something substantive and on the sales side and be a part of something that was making things or producing things or something where you could actually have some materials and you could talk about your industry and what it's all about. So I was very fortunate to joined Kenwal Steel 11 years ago, and I've had 27 years in the steel business in general, working as a steel producer, raw material trading, and service center side with Kenwal Steel.
Excellent. Now, what would you say are some of the changes that you see coming 5 years from now, maybe on the material side and out of the high tech areas?
Well, we're going to continue to see high-strength steels being used and the replacement of low-carbon steels. I mean, I think we're going to see dual-phase be implemented in some of the automotive stamping categories, strip steels, complex-phase steels, where the automotive companies and other manufacturers are on board with it as well to lighten up vehicles and parts and make them actually stronger. So I think it's a pretty exciting time in general, because I'm seeing the steel mills produce products they've never really produced 20 years ago, and I see what's on the drawing board for the future, and it looks like we're going to continue to see lighter vehicles for fuel economy and safety reasons, and I think that's really going to be the push in the next decade.
Yeah, I hear from a lot of stampers, and they're certainly adapting most of their tooling to be able to work with higher strength steels and adapt to different tooling profiles that they probably had never thought of before. But I think because they're being driven in that direction to produce and put out parts for automotive, that they have to start looking in that direction. Do you see that over this time, the next 5 years or so? Obviously, workforce is going to change dramatically. What things are you seeing now where that even you might be challenged with as far as trying to acquire labor talent?
Well, I think when we are lucky in the fact that we're a privately held company, so we are not responding to shareholders every quarter or the private equity groups that are upset with returns on equity. So we have a little bit of an ability to step back and kind of say we're a family-run business, and we try to treat our employees as family. And so as we look at recruitment and how we go after employees, we kind of want them to be a part of the group that's more than just coming to work here. We do a lot as far as having conversations with our employees about customers, not just, customer wants this or customer wants that, but a little bit more about what they actually make and where they're located at and what challenges they have. And then, we also go after, we try to do some things family oriented, because I don't think anybody that's an employee of a company is really just an employee. I think their families are a part of it too. That's how I started in the manufacturing business. My dad, had me in the plant driving a forklift at 16. Of course, you could do that back in the 70s without that being a big problem. But,
right.
I got to meet his coworkers in the plant. I got to meet his bosses, and I got to understand what they did. And, it formed a bond in what I wanted to do in my career. So, we try to do the same thing here. With a lot of the great things that PMA does with the scholarships and getting the young people involved is great, because without that, a lot of people don't know. This younger generation sometimes looks around and says, well, all I want to do is make apps and sit at a coffee shop. Well, that's not really, doing anything for the economy, and that's not really realistic. So, we could try to go out of our way to make it more of a family type business and a career for our employees.
Right. Do you think now, when you and I got into this business years ago, there was something that drew us in? You were involved because your father, and same with me, my father worked at General Motors. So I know somewhat why I got into it, because of the interest in actually manufacturing things. I was always drawn to that. Do you see now with some of the kids that are coming out today with things like programming and coding and interest in things like these robotics and programming that and going into these robotics competitions, do you see that as an opportunity for a stronger labor force in that way?
I would like to say yes, but I'm not really sure, because, I am a huge BattleBots fan. Mm-hmm. And I really enjoy watching that, and I love watching the enthusiasm this younger generation has in creating these things. And I just think we're at that cusp where we're going to see some dramatic changes in that arena. And I think there's going to be a whole emphasis. If we keep with this kind of a low labor unemployment rate, we may see some really drastic changes where, this younger generation can create some automated equipment and some things that we really can't fathom right now. Because the thing about them is I don't think they look at the status quo kind of like we did in our generation and said, well, that can never be changed. I think this generation looks at things and goes, yeah, this can be changed. So let's do this, this, and this. For me, I think that's pretty interesting to watch.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a lot of great things on the horizon that we can't even fathom right now.
I know what you're talking about. One of the things that I've found is when you come across people like in the 3D printing arena and additive manufacturing, you see a lot of that where the younger generation didn't start off with these preconceived notions that you can't build that because it doesn't fit in with this formula and it can't be manufactured. So when they're drawing something up, they don't even go into it with that thought.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't know if it's because they started playing video games when they were 9, and so they've seen this creative element that we didn't get to see, as growing up, because we kind of went and we had the real structured viewpoints when we started our careers. Well, you work at this company and you do this and you go here. These kids come in and go, well, what can we do this? Or can we do that? And you really see it at the university level. That's where you see the creativity that just, is kind of mind blowing, because they're not set in stone in anything they want to do the rest of their life, except maybe, social media, but hopefully they grow out of that at some point.
Right. And have you noticed, I know this has been one of the biggest battle points for companies, especially dealing with millennials, has been when you've got a policy of, no devices on the floor, and trying to balance that. You even see it in sports where you've got all these athletes that are in their early 20s and they want to have their devices with them wherever they go, and they set aside a certain time frame for being able to use them, or incorporating their devices into a way that they use them as part of their job. Do you see that changing somewhat?
I don't think that it's ever a good idea, especially when you're talking about some of the safety issues that confront a lot of manufacturing companies today, that you can really blend a lot of those things. I mean, I think we're seeing it, with the crackdown on driving and texting. I mean, this is what's causing a large majority of accidents in the U.S. So it's not incorporating, hey, let them have their phones and drive around. It's, you got to shut the thing off. And I think, there's been a lot of studies and talks that, this generation is so heavy in it that their kids will not be, because they'll start steering them away from a little bit. And I don't know how that's going to play out.
Right.
But I think what we try to tell the people we have in our generation is, you do get breaks, you do have lunch breaks. Nothing is really that important. And maybe sooner or later people realize, well, I don't really care what's going on, my uncle's sister's cousin 300,000 miles away on Facebook, today. Doesn't bother me at all. But I don't know how that plays out going forward.
Yeah. I know when it comes to the Internet of Things and the accessibility to even on machinery, everything is going the virtual direction of pumping out this information. And we are definitely at another one of those crossroads in our lives of overload of information. But I think this time around, as opposed to the big data that we've seen in the past, is more of a driving factor for automated processing of this stuff, using more artificial intelligence, because I think we learned before, gathering data just to gather it didn't do us any good.
Exactly.
Because if you can't act on it, what good is it? And
exactly.
Have you seen manufacturers change in their mindset of that somewhat?
Yeah, I have. I've seen a lot of manufacturers start talking about, one of our customers came out with something that says, kind of like a core philosophy is what matters now. Meaning, like, instead of just collecting data to collect it, are they making moves so you're not wasting time looking at stuff that doesn't mean anything? Calculating things that, especially with like downtime, you hone in so much. Can you hone in any more than that? No. Okay, then let's move on to the next subject, because we've crossed that that boundary, and we're doing fine there. So, with that, I mean, everybody's looking at from office staff all the way through is how do you best utilize the people you have? And are you cross-training, and are you learning, are the people learning each other's roles so that in the what-if scenario of losing people, vacations, illness, whatever, that you're an efficient organization?
Yeah. And I think that's something that because of the workforce development situation, it has really driven us in that way to show us you really need to look at cross-training people, because nothing is guaranteed in this world. And if something happens,
that's right.
You better have a plan. You got to have a contingency plan for everything.
Exactly.
What changes have you seen, like in Kenwal over the years, to try and adopt new philosophies, and do you see a big change coming over the next 5 years of how you work around manufacturing, how you service that industry better?
Well, we've seen it. The changes we've seen has been, there's more communication between us and our customers at all different levels. So it's not just the steel buyer, it's the quality engineers, it's the tool and die engineers, it's the program managers, it's the conversations with those folks that are looking at new programs, new work, and then also, a lot of people that are looking to try to improve their process and flow and their materials. So, instead of calling on one person that you had for, 10 years in that same role, you've got 5 or 6 people you need to be checking in with. And likewise, we've, seen a change in customers wanting more contact and more availability to technical resources. And I think that's going to continue as we keep going down this path of advanced high shrinks.
Yeah. Have you seen the attitude of your customers changing in the way that they ask for information? Have you had more people ask you for automated reporting?
Yeah, we definitely have seen that. We've seen, we're lucky in the standpoint that we have a group that handles what we do internally. So if a customer asks us something or needs something, even though, we're not really sure what the mindset or goal is of it, we have the capability of producing that kind of information for them frequently and as much as they want on that. And we've seen the steel producers do the same thing, where they're offering more information and more dialogue when it comes to steel practices and what they're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an environment, as you know, Dean, where nobody wants claims and nobody wants to have quality issues. I mean, nobody can afford to have, if somebody buys a coil and only 95% of the coil works and the other 5% is thrown away. I mean, those days are gone.
Right.
You got to have the efficiency of your organization depends on the efficiency of your vendors. So there's going to be more dialogue going forward on all parties, in my mind.
Yeah, I think that from a manufacturing standpoint nowadays, and I think if you look at it from everything that you have around your home, your work environment, it is just not acceptable that you have something that fails or goes bad. How many things do you ever see now come out of the box that are bad? I mean, I think that's a testament to how we look at, and includes things like packaging, even how we ship things.
Sure.
All aspects of it. We've changed, and we now live in a world that has such high expectation. I think from a quality standpoint, failure's just not acceptable on any level. If you got a TV that you bought and you brought it home, and you open it up and it didn't work, the attitude that you have towards that is just through the roof. Nobody, and I think even the next generation certainly sees that because they've never dealt with it.
Exactly. I mean, we have one of our customers said something I thought was pretty accurate. He says, how many times do you get on Amazon or on Google ratings, and do you buy something that has 2 or 3 stars?
Never.
What percentage of the population, when they search to buy something, looks for something that's 4 stars and above? Yep. I just bought a case for my cell phone, and that was the first thing I wanted. 4 stars and up.
Mm-hmm.
And a point click, and I want to hear the next day. And that's just one small purchase. People are doing that with the appliance market. We see with refrigerators, with TVs. We're seeing it with lawn and garden. We're seeing it in automotive. It's when somebody has a bad experience now, it's they tell people.
Yeah.
And they go on and it becomes a mantra. If somebody says this brand is great, but this brand is garbage, it seems like instead of telling everybody everything is great, they only spend time telling you which one's garbage.
Yeah, you used to have the adage that if you do something right, that 1 out of 10 people is going to tell somebody. If you do something wrong, they're going to tell 10 people.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, and now
or tweet about it.
Yeah, that's it. Is that now with Twitter and with Facebook and other avenues, it's not going to get heard by 10 people. It's going to be hundreds of people that are going to hear about it. And
that's right.
It's just crazy how much that has changed in the way that we address things. And I think and in many ways it's good, because I think you couldn't just ignore a customer and say, that's just unacceptable, and I don't care if you don't think that we put out something good. You have to be attentive to every need. Large companies have entire rooms full of people addressing negative feedback from social media.
That's right.
It's a different world in that aspect, and in many ways, though, quality has just changed so much. Do you find more of a need for things like the Internet of Things and more feedback loops from devices?
Well, I think the thing that we struggle with as a steel distributor is we see the one side of the manufacturing world and the culture where it says, oh, you got to be more mobile app, you got to be more this, and then when we go to customers and we ask these questions, hey, would you like to see something from us? They look at me with this funny look and go, no, I just send an email or a text. I think the thing is, I think they're great if they get you somewhere, but they're not great if it's cumbersome or if there's 1 or 2 problems. And you talk about the rating system. How many times have you looked at an app and it says, did not work the first time, 1 star?
Yeah.
Did not pull it up. We try to really take a hard look when it comes to mobility questions and say, okay, what does the customer really want here? Versus just going out and saying, hey, we had this great idea and it's going to be on this app and it's going to follow you around on vacation and say, do you need any steel? Or, do you want to look for a cert on your phone? Or, customers want to be taken care of in all the industries, but they don't want to be bothered and hassled about something that may or may not work.
Yeah. If George Karamejev from did so much work on die protection, it was always a thing that he was always complaining about, is that people all over the place, they complain about problems, but then you provide a solution and they say, well, yeah, I'm not really interested in doing that. And I think you're right. I think you have to be responsive to what the customer really wants, because you can chase that. Years ago in PMA, I got into this thing of, if I ask people what they want, they're going to give me 1,000 ideas of what they want. But if I ask them what they'll commit to, that is a whole different thing, because that changes that question. That if this is what you want, they're like, oh yeah, I want this thing to send me a message whenever I get this. I want it to have this stuff. Okay, so if I get all those things, you're going to buy it. Probably not. We don't really need that.
Well, that's why it's sometimes better to be slow to implement change, right? I mean, that's one of the things that, it's like 3 years ago, one of our, not really a competitor because they're in a different product than we are. It's like, what's your millennial strategy? What's your millennials? Don't you got to bring millennials in? And I said, I don't really have one. I go, I'm kind of confused. I'm still old school style, looking into candidates, who they know, what their experience level is, all those kind of things. They're like, well, we went out and hired 18 to 20 people, that are millennials, and we put a ping pong table in, and, it's great. And, they've got all these ideas. And then I ran into this person last July at a function, and I said, so how's the millennial strategy? Well, it's a complete failure. I only have 2 left of those 18 to 20 that I had. And I said, well, that's great. You still have the ping pong table. I think there's a lot of things culturally that we get amped up to do and that we think are the right thing to do. I just don't ever feel that any one of us should be at the very forefront of making those changes, because I think it's kind of a walk before you run type deal.
Yeah.
And changes take some time in some organizations, especially when you talk about automotive, you talk about stamping, you talk about steel business. Changes are good, but they have to be measured as to having a benefit for everybody.
Yeah. And that's the biggest thing is what is impactful, what is going to really change your business and improve it. I think that's the other thing I hear all the time is the word change. And you can look at things in a lot of ways, but a lot of change can be bad too. And you could just change just for the sake of change.
Well, especially if it's somebody that says, okay, we're going to make a change and it's 90% of what you do. Yeah. That big of a change. If it's a 10% or 15% of something that you kind of see how you're going to do in it, that's a different story. Like you hear automotive stampers say, well, I'm going to do a little bit in the medical field. You always worry about the one that says, well, we're going to switch to the medical field in general. I'm like, well, okay, that's not that big of an industry. But, it's just to kind of look-see as you go through the process. Maybe it's my age or our age steel business, which is there's not that many rapid changes that we want to jump in front of.
Yeah. And I think you hit it on the head there, is that our industry, the stamping as a whole, is a very slowly evolving industry, because you only do things when you have enough volume in our industry. Whereas on fabrication, it's low volume, or even if it's high volume, it's rapid changeovers. It's very small run processes in many cases. And you don't even build a tool until you have the volume of business to justify building a tool. And I think for that reason, we are always the slowest to enable those changes, because you could kill a program by making the wrong move when it comes to manufacturing.
Sure. And how many times, between you and I and the audience out there, have we seen or heard of examples of that happening where, well, what happened? Well, they quoted this, but they didn't count on this, this, and this. And then you read a short period later, they're bankrupt or they're gone, or, the typical, well, we fired everybody in that department and started over again. I mean, it's just, you do that once or twice, or you hear about it. You don't want to go down. You don't want to be the
right. You don't want to be the next one of those.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Well, Trevor, hey, we are just about out of time here, but I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here today. And
thank you, Dean. I appreciate it.
How can people get a hold of you?
Well, you can look me up on LinkedIn, or I'm always reachable at my office at my office phone number, which is 615-443-5704.
Great. And again, we want to thank the Precision Metal Forming Association for helping us put this show on, and the Precision Metal Forming's Educational Foundation. And if you want to hear other podcasts, of our show, you can go to any one of a number of places: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, radio.com, all those good places on YouTube. And we appreciate your support. Please like and subscribe to the show, and go out and make it a great day.